Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk a little bit about the life of a legendary professional wrestler that passed away not so long ago, Sika Anoa'i. Sika was, of course, one half of the Wild Samoans, the legendary tag team, and of course, he was the father of the former WWE champion and the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Sika. Sika, of course, was born in American Samoa, an island at the time when he was born in the 1940s, was administered by not only the United States, but New Zealand as well back then. And he and his brother, they were basically Alpha. They were basically wrestling fans growing up. Because even though he was born in Samoa, he moved to San Francisco, and they were wrestling fans growing up of of fans of High Chief Peter Maivia, and they would go to the Cow Palace. This was the days of Roy Shire's territory in the 1960s and early 70s, and it was a huge Polynesian population of people from the Pacific Islands. We talk about a lot on this channel, um, different territories and how different territories cater to different ethnicities. Well, in the San Francisco territory at that time, big time wrestling, it was catered to a lot of Polynesians. And High Chief Peter Maivia, The Rock's grandfather, was um, a part of that, right? So Sika and his brother were going there, and the main rivals of that time of High Chief Peter Maivia were Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson. We talked about Pat Patterson and the influence that he had in the San Francisco territory, back in those days. But it got so rowdy, they didn't know that wrestling was fake. So the Wild Samoans, Afa Sika, actually jumped in the freaking ring wanting to beat up Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens. And it got to a point where Roy Shire the promoter there had to pull uh, High Chief Peter Maivia aside and say, listen, smarten these guys up, because if you don't, they're going to end up seriously hurting somebody. Well, not only did he smarten them up, he actually befriended them, and they became blood brothers. They made a blood pact amongst them. You know what I mean? To the point where Afa Sika and High Chief Peter Maivia were like, basically family, some kind of Samoan or Polynesian type of ritual where they became bonded. And of course, this was the early insipid version of the bloodline in this territory. And then, of course, Peter Maivia's um, uh, Peter Maivia puts in a word for them in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation in New York, and Captain Lou Albano brings them in 1979, and they win the WWF. Not so long after that, they come in as Albano's Wild Men, and they win the WWF Tag Team Championships, and it just become a super over dominant tag team. And an interesting factoid, given that they are related to The Rock's father, when he won the WWF tag team, well, at that time it was 1983, so it was the WWF. When he won the WWF Tag Team Championships with Tony Atlas, becoming the first African American tag team to win that championship, they beat the Wild Samoans. So It's kind of like family all around. But also, um, uh, Peter Maivia's, uh, I think it was Peter Maivia's, not his, not his daughter. I think, I think his wife, right, The Rock's grandmother, who they honored at the Hall of Fame this past year, um, was also adopted by uh, the Anoa'is. I'm not sure how that really works. What's the connection there? I heard that somewhere. That The Rock's grandmother, who was the promoter in the Hawaii territory, the 50 states promotion, uh, Pacific Pro, was adopted by the Anoa'i family. But and then, for a while after they left the WWF, they went into other territories. They wrestled in Mid South for a while, but it was mostly after their career was over. The legacy that they left behind was so many Anawahis got into the wrestling business. Yokozuna, Fatu, and Samu, who basically they had the same gimmick that that Afa and Sika had, but an updated version with the head shrinkers. Um, uh, Roman Reigns, Rosie and Jamal, um, Umaga, right? And of course, The Rock and Nia Jackson, all of them. And of course, the tribal chief himself, Roman Reigns. And they trained a lot of other wrestlers too. They opened up their own wrestling school. They had a hand in training Batista. They had a hand in training other superstars. And for the movie, um, The Wrestler, 2008's movie starring Mickey Rourke, it was Afa Sika who trained Mickey Rourke. So they had a hand in that. And it was interesting to see this past week on SmackDown, the Bloodline. Wait, hold on, guys. I'm looking. That's gonna bug me. That's gonna bug me now. So, the thing about okay, it says here, Reverend Amatua Anawahi, uh, Peter, uh, had a daughter named Ophelia Leah Fatauga, who had a daughter named Ata, whom he adopted and raised as his own. Ata married wrestler Rocky Johnson, and the couple became the parents of Dwayne Johnson. So it was Rock's mother who later adopted by the Anoa'i family. You know what I mean? So that's how close they were. that Rock's mom was adopted into this family. But it's interesting how they entered into the business first as fans and then later as wrestlers, and to have such a huge impact on the business. The picture here from the thumbnail is from 2020's Hell in a Cell, the match Jey Uso against Roman Reigns, in which Roman Reigns became the tribal chief. Um, you know, but you know, Afa Sika, I didn't get a chance to really see them in their prime. I wish I had. There's not enough really on the network, in my opinion, out there about them. You know what I mean? Of course, he had a tremendous career in Madison Square Garden. I think the World Wrestling Federation, the New York territory, that's the territory that people most remember them in. You know what I mean? Because they just did the SmackDown recently. Um, in Madison Square Garden, of the famous one where Paul Heyman, Paul Heyman is a connection in this too. Paul Heyman, like I said, when they came into the WWF in 1979, it was Paul Heyman's mentor, Captain Lou Albano, who was their manager. Captain Lou became so immersed in the Samoan culture, the Polynesian culture, that people thought he was Polynesian, even though he was Italian, right? So, like, he would wear the Hawaiian shirts and everything. And later on, in 1994, they brought him back as the manager of the Head Shrinkers when the Head Shrinkers turned babyface. I talk about it in my 1994 year in review video, that the Head Shrinkers needed a babyface manager because Afa, his gimmick was that he didn't speak, so he couldn't be the face of it, right? So they brought back Captain Lou. But the fact that Captain Lou brought Paul Heyman into the business, and the Wild Samoans wrestled so many matches. In fact, on the same day in the late 70s, on the same day that it was like April 2nd or whatever, April 3rd, that Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns had their second match at WrestleMania 30, that same day, years and years before, in 1978, Sika and Dusty Rhodes had a match against each other. Because remember, Dusty Rhodes, for a period of time in the late 70s, left the Florida territory and was loaned out to New York, and he wrestled in the Garden. It was when he almost won the championship against superstar Billy Graham. But the point is, the Wild Samoans wrestled so many matches in Madison Square Garden, and they had Captain Lou as their manager, and Captain Lou was the guy who brought in Paul Heyman, because Paul Heyman was he was like, they call him the Northeast Jim Cornette, and he really was the same thing like Jim Cornette. The same way that Jim Cornette was in Memphis, taking pictures and being by ringside and getting to know the people in the magazines and the people in the promotion, and Jerry Jarrett took a liking to him. It was similar with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman was in the Garden taking pictures, and Vince McMahon Sr. took a liking to him, and Classy Freddie Blassie, and of course Lou Albano. Right? So in that arena, the Garden, where Sika wrestled, where Afa wrestled, and where Paul Heyman first broke in to the business in the late 70s, and SmackDown, they had Paul Heyman's proudest moments, being turned on by being betrayed by the bloodline. Now, of course, that's kayfabe. Really, he's cool with the bloodline. He managed Fatu and Samu when they were in WCW as a Samoan SWAT team. He's basically connected to them, and he's connected to the spirit of Captain Lou Albano as well. You know what I mean? But he was featured in that. You know what I mean? He was featured in that feud. He turned babyface for the first time ever in his career as a manager. Like, you could argue that Paul Heyman was a babyface when he was the owner of ECW and they would do invasions or like ECW One Night Stand in '05 when they're going against Eric Bischoff and the SmackDown crew. He was a babyface then, but he was never a babyface as a manager. Even when Brock was basically a babyface, when people were cheering Brock in certain instances, Paul Heyman was always a heel. You know what I mean? But he, for the first time ever, after being inducted into the Hall of Fame this past year, he was a babyface. You know, he was a babyface. So that was his proudest moment. And up on the screen in Madison Square Garden, as you're coming in, excuse me, they had Alpha. I mean Sika's picture. You know what I mean? So it was a night to celebrate the bloodline. And those are the people that love the bloodline, like I do. I feel like the bloodline is the storyline that really saved the WWE and took the WWE to the next level because WWE was struggling for so many years, trying to find their footing. They were trying to push Roman Reigns as a mega bay face, kind of like Cena, and have it, split 50-50, right? But there's only one Cena. Only Cena could do what Cena did. Nobody else could do what Cena did. You know what I mean? Remain a babyface and have the people boo you and cheer you at the same time simultaneously. You know, but they tried to do with Roman and it didn't work. But when they turned him heel and he joined and he formed the bloodline later on, that's where he found his niche. Now you got it to a point where Solo Sikoa is completely dominating, completely taking over the bloodline, bring in Tamatanga, bring in Tangaloa, and bring in Jacob Fatu. And taking over the bloodline that fans are cramming for Roman Reigns to come back. They can't wait for Roman Reigns to come back. Hopefully it happens soon. But and a funny story about Sika before I end this video is WrestleMania 31, and this ties into Paul Heyman too as well. WrestleMania 31, Paul Heyman is managing Brock Lesnar. They're in San Francisco. Again, the Cow Palace. I mean, not the Cow Palace, Levi's Stadium, right? Because I don't know if the Cow Palace still exists. Somebody in the comment section from San Francisco will have to let me know if the Cow Palace still exists. But anyway, this is WrestleMania, so they're having it in big stadium shows. But Roman Reigns is going for his first championship. He's just won the Royal Rumble 2015. He's kind of on a roll as far as like winning matches, but the fans aren't really buying into him. Remember what happened at Royal Rumble 2015 when even The Rock couldn't save him. The Rock came out and they even still booed his ass out the arena. But he's thinking he's going to win the WWE Championship, right? And his father is thinking that too. He doesn't know that they changed course and they changed plans, and that at the end they're going to have Seth Rollins run in, and Seth Rollins is going to cash in his Money in the Bank and beat Brock Lesnar for the championship. So when he finds this out, he's livid backstage. So once again, even in his old age, old man Sika was ready to jump off that guardrail in front of everybody at WrestleMania 31 and whoop somebody's ass because his son did not win the WWF championship, WWE championship. Just like he had done all those years before, sticking up for Peter Maivia. He still had a little bit of mark in him. It was still real to him, right? Because that was his son. But anyway, rest in peace to Sika of the Wild Samoans. You know what I mean? Father to Roman Reigns and to hang on, guys. Oh, yeah, Rosie, from back in the day, people remember. the progenitor, or one of the progenitors anyway, of the Anoa'i bloodline, rest in peace, really opened the door, blew open the door for Polynesian wrestlers. You know, we think of Polynesians, the greatest Polynesians in professional wrestling. Most of them come from the Anoa'i family: Yokozuna, Rosie, Jamal, Umaga. But other Polynesians like Haku, like Jimmy Superfly Snuka, like High Chief Peter Maivia. High Chief was in the game before that, but pretty much every Polynesian, every Pacific Islander that became a part of professional wrestling was a part of the Anoa'i family, other than Samoa Joe. you know, the one Samoan who was not a member of the Anoa'i family, right? They have a huge family. A huge fan. Like, it seems like every member of the Bloodline 2.0 is somehow, like, how many relatives does Roman Reigns and The Rock have? You know what I mean? What does their cookouts look like? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Family busting out the woodwork. But anyway, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see when my next video is coming out. Rest in peace to Sika of the Wild Samoans. Like I said, I never really watched Wild Samoans matches because they were in the 70s and early 80s before I was even born. You know what I mean? But sometimes when I had really long hair, and I've had really long hair here in some other videos, you guys can go back and see. I kind of looked like I was a member of the Wild Samoans or something. You know what I mean? Peace.